I was 35 years old when I finally admitted the truth to myself. My family had never truly seen me as their equal. I was not the daughter who could lean on them, nor the sister whose presence was cherished. To them, I was simply a tool useful when they needed money convenient, when they needed help dependable, when they wanted someone to blame. And for years, I accepted it, burying my resentment under layers of duty. But that Christmas, on the eve of what should have been a moment of unity, they pushed me too far. And I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I still remember the snow that blanketed Manhattan that afternoon. I had stayed late at my office, standing by the glass window 35 floors up, watching the flakes fall gently over the city. The financial district was quiet, wrapped in silver, almost peaceful. My desk, however, was buried under reports and spreadsheets numbers that had consumed my life for over a decade. I had built myself into one of the most respected senior analysts at my firm, pulling in more than most of my colleagues, yet somehow none of it ever seemed enough for my family. My income was not a point of pride in their eyes. It was a resource to be drained. The truth was, since my father's death 15 years earlier, I had been their safety net. He had died with worry in his eyes, pressing my hand and whispering, "You're strong, Ashley. You're the only one I can trust to take care of the family." His words had shaped me, fueled me, haunted me. I became the achiever, the provider, the one who didn't break. And my family learned quickly how to twist that into their advantage. My mother remarried, finding comfort in a man who loved appearances more than substance. My brother drifted through life spending money he didn't earn, showing off his luxuries online. And every time they stumbled, every time bills loomed, debts piled up, or indulgences beckoned, it was me they turned to. Not with gratitude, but with expectation. That winter, I thought maybe I could change things. I thought if I gave them something grand, something undeniable, they might see me differently. So I planned a Christmas trip to Aspen. A luxury resort, expensive rooms, every detail covered by me. I told myself it was a gift, a chance to mend what had been broken between us. Maybe if I gave them everything, they would finally give me back. Something respect, love, recognition. The night before we were to leave, I received a text from my brother. "You're picking us up tomorrow, right? Don't oversleep." His arrogance bled through the words even on a screen. I clenched my jaw but replied simply, "Of course." The next morning, I rose before dawn. I dressed carefully, slipping on a cashmere sweater, fastening the diamond necklace my father had left me. In the mirror, I told myself it would be worth it, that this time maybe things would change. I drove my sleek black Mercedes through snowy streets, first to pick up my mother and stepfather, then my brother and his wife. They climbed into the car without thanks, without warmth, as though I were their chauffeur. My mother's coat was bright red, her handbag designer. My brother smirked as he slid into the passenger seat, already scrolling through his phone, probably drafting another boastful post about his perfect life. For 2 hours I drove in near silence, the car heavy with unspoken truths. Only when the resort came into view did Brian's voice break the quiet. "There it is," he said, grinning, as if he had done anything to make it happen. When I parked in front of the Grand Hotel, my heart lifted slightly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. But then Brian turned to me, his smile twisting into something I had never seen before. "The driver's job ends here," he said coolly. "This hotel is for us, the real family only." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. I had paid for every room, planned every detail, and yet he looked at me with disdain, as if I were an outsider trespassing on their paradise. My mother averted her gaze. My stepfather looked out the window. My sister-in-law smirked. I whispered I made the reservations. "Oh, the reservations," Brian sneered. "They've already been changed, just to our names." And in that instant, I saw everything clearly. All the years of sacrifice, all the nights I transferred money, all the times I swallowed my pride, it had never mattered. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was a means to an end. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. With a steadiness I didn't know I had, I called William, the man who owned the resort, the man who had quietly cared for me when no one else did. "Cancel the reservations," I said calmly. "All of them." The chaos that followed is burned into my memory. The staff approached my family, informing them there were no reservations under their names. Their confusion turned to panic, then anger. My brother's voice cracked as he insisted there must be a mistake. My mother rummaged through her purse as if money could solve everything. My sister-in-law's smirk faltered, and I rolled down my window, meeting their eyes with a calm I had never felt before. "It's no mistake," I said. "All reservations have been cancelled. Goodbye." I started the engine, their voices muffled by the falling snow as I pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing there stranded in their designer coats, their luggage sinking into the drifts. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel guilt. I felt free. As I drove down the mountain, a single tear slid down my cheek. Not of sorrow, but of liberation. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls, texts, accusations. "You've embarrassed us. You've ruined Christmas. Refund the money. Always money. Never love." I turned the phone off and drove toward the only place I wanted to be, William's penthouse. That night, sitting in the warmth of his living room, firelight dancing across the walls, I told him everything. My brother's malicious smirk, my mother's silence, my decision. And when I faltered when guilt tried to creep back in, William placed his hand on mine and said softly, "They ruined their own Christmas. You just protected your worth." For years I had carried the burden of being their good daughter. That night I laid it down. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a different kind of family, not the one I was born into, but the one I could choose. When I woke up the next morning in William's penthouse, the weight of what I had done began to settle in. The snow outside had not stopped blanketing the city in white, muting the usual chaos. I stood by the window, staring down at the streets, wondering if I had crossed an invisible line. Had I finally gone too far? Or had I at long last simply taken back what was always mine, the right to say no? My phone was still buzzing on the counter, dozens of missed calls, text messages filled with fury and manipulation. "How could you do this? We're stranded because of you. You've embarrassed the family." My brother's words dripped with entitlement, my mother's with guilt-tripping, my sister-in-law's with venom. But beneath every message, the same truth pulsed. None of them asked if I was okay. None of them wondered how I felt. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The old me, the dutiful daughter, the compliant sister would have picked up, apologized, begged forgiveness. But that version of me was gone. Instead, I walked into the kitchen where William was brewing coffee. He looked at me, his calm eyes searching mine. "Are you ready for the storm?" he asked gently. I nodded, though my stomach churned. "They're going to hate me." "They already did," he said simply. "They hated you the moment you stopped being useful to them. What they hate now is that you finally saw through it." His words pierced me with painful clarity. I had spent so long believing that if I just gave more, sacrificed more, they would love me. But love that only exists when you're giving is not love, it's consumption. Later that day, I drove back to my apartment. The silence in my own space was deafening after the chaos of the past 48 hours. I lit a candle, sat on the couch, and opened my journal, a habit I had abandoned years ago. Slowly, I began to write. They stranded me in my own family. They wanted me to be nothing more than their driver, their bank, their shield. But last night I stranded them. For once I gave them the taste of what they've always given me, abandonment. And I don't feel guilty. The words spilled out like water breaking through a dam. I wrote about my father's last words, the pressure he unknowingly placed on me, the way my mother had twisted it into control. I wrote about my brother's arrogance, my sister-in-law's mockery, my stepfather's silence. I wrote until the candle melted low, until my hand cramped, until I finally felt something loosen inside me. In the days that followed, the fallout spread quickly. My mother tried to spin the story to relatives, claiming I had a breakdown, that I had ruined Christmas out of spite. My brother posted vague rants online about betrayal, his friends chiming in with empty sympathy. My sister-in-law, ever the actress, told anyone who would listen that I had humiliated her. But here's what surprised me: not everyone believed them. My Aunt Clara called me privately, her voice trembling. "I've seen how they've treated you for years," she whispered. "I never said anything because I didn't want to cause a rift, but what you did, it took courage." Her words nearly brought me to tears. For so long I thought I had been invisible. To know that someone had seen, even silently, felt like a balm to my soul. Still, the guilt tried to creep back in at night. I'd lie awake replaying my father's dying wish. "You're the only one I can trust to take care of the family." Had I betrayed him by walking away? Had I failed him by choosing myself? One night, unable to sleep, I went for a walk. The city streets were quiet snow crunching under my boots. I ended up at the small church near my office, its doors always left open. I slipped inside, the warmth of candlelight washing over me. I sat in the back pew and whispered into the silence, "Dad, I'm sorry. I tried. I tried for 15 years. But they don't want family, they want a servant. I can't carry it anymore." Tears rolled down my cheeks, hot and relentless. For the first time, I admitted the truth: I couldn't save them. And maybe, just maybe, my father hadn't meant for me to. Maybe his words had been born of desperation, not command. Maybe the responsibility I carried was never meant to be mine at all. The realization lifted something off my shoulders, not completely, but enough that I could breathe. The next morning, I made a decision. I blocked my brother's number, then my sister-in-law's, then finally my mother's. The silence that followed was terrifying but also liberating. It felt like stepping off a cliff and realizing halfway down that you could fly. Of course, silence didn't mean the war was over. My family found other ways to reach me. Letters slipped under my door, voicemails from relatives, even a confrontation at my workplace when my brother showed up demanding money. But by then, something inside me had changed. I didn't flinch. I didn't bend. I looked him in the eye and said, "You'll have to figure it out on your own." He stormed out, muttering curses, but I felt stronger than I ever had. Around that time, William invited me to join him on a business trip to Paris. At first, I hesitated. Traveling for pleasure, spending money on myself, it felt indulgent, almost wrong after years of being conditioned to serve. But he insisted, and something in me longed for escape. So I went. Paris in winter was breathtaking. The Eiffel Tower glittered against the night sky. The Seine shimmered under the bridges. The streets buzzed with music and light. As I stood on a balcony overlooking the city, a glass of champagne in hand, I realized how small my world had been all these years. I had caged myself in my family's expectations, and now for the first time I could see beyond it. But liberation is never a straight line. On the flight back, my phone buzzed with a single message from my mother. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You've destroyed this family." I stared at the words for a long time. Then slowly I typed back, "No, Mom. You destroyed it the moment you chose appearances over love. I just refused to keep pretending." I hit send, turned off my phone, and leaned back in my seat. For once, I didn't tremble. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. When I landed back in New York, the city greeted me with its familiar gray skyline, the streets still glittering with patches of dirty snow. But something inside me had shifted. The old me, the woman who always checked her phone, who carried the family like a cross she never asked for, was gone. In her place was someone quieter but stronger. Someone who had finally understood that peace is not given, it's claimed. For weeks I stayed quiet. No calls, no explanations, no apologies. It was the first time in my life I had cut them off completely. My apartment, once suffocating with loneliness, now became a sanctuary. I lit candles in the evenings, cooked meals just for myself, and read books I'd always been too exhausted to open. At night, I wrote pages in my journal, every hurt, every betrayal, every manipulation cataloged in black ink. It was as if by putting it all down on paper, I was pulling poison out of my veins. But of course, silence has a way of unsettling abusers. They rely on your responses, on the endless cycle of guilt and reconciliation. When I stopped playing my role, they scrambled. First came my brother. He showed up outside my building one Friday night, his face flushed with anger. I watched from the window as he paced, dialing my number over and over. Finally, I went down, not because I wanted to see him, but because I wanted to end it on my terms. "You're ruining everything," he spat the moment he saw me. "Do you even realize how bad you made us look at the resort? Do you know what people are saying about us?" I looked at him, at the expensive jacket he probably couldn't afford, at the self-pity written all over his face. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear or guilt. I felt pity. "What people think of you isn't my problem anymore," I said calmly. "You humiliated yourselves. I just stopped covering for you." His jaw tightened. "You think you're better than us now? You're not. You're nothing without us." Once those words would have shattered me. but now they slid off like water. "No, Brian," I whispered. "I was nothing because of you. Now without you I am finally something." He cursed under his breath, stormed off, and I watched him disappear into the night. It should have hurt losing the bond of blood, but in truth I realized it wasn't a bond at all. It was a leash, and I had cut it. Weeks turned into months. My mother's silence remained unbroken, though I heard whispers through relatives. She told them I was ungrateful, mentally unstable, poisoned by greed. But oddly enough, those whispers didn't sting the way they once would have. I knew who I was now, and I didn't need her version of me to survive. Instead, I focused on rebuilding myself. William, steady as always, encouraged me to step outside the shadows I had hidden in for so long. He introduced me to colleagues, partners, people who saw me not as a resource, but as a person. Slowly, I began to imagine a life where my worth wasn't tied to how much I gave away. But trauma has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. One night, I woke from a dream that left me trembling. I was back in the car at the resort, my brother sneering, my mother silent, my sister-in-law smirking. I woke up in a cold sweat, my chest tight, tears on my cheeks. It was then I realized liberation doesn't erase scars. It only teaches you to live with them. I started therapy not long after. For years I had believed therapy was weakness, a crutch. But sitting in that quiet office, pouring out my story to a stranger who didn't flinch, I realized it was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Session by session, I unpacked the lies I had been fed, that love must be earned through sacrifice, that silence was the price of belonging, that loyalty meant self-destruction. One day, my therapist asked me a question that lodged itself deep in my mind. What would your life look like if you stopped living for their approval? The answer terrified me, because for the first time, I imagined a life where my family wasn't the center of my universe. A life where I was free to be more than their driver, their wallet, their scapegoat. That spring, I took a leap I never thought I'd take. I quit my job at the firm. I had money saved enough to keep me afloat, and for the first time I didn't want to spend my days chained to a desk just to feed a cycle of exploitation. I wanted to build something of my own. I launched a consultancy, small, at first focused on helping women manage their finances and build independence. Word spread quickly. Clients came not just for my expertise, but for my honesty. I didn't just talk numbers, I talked survival, resilience, freedom. My pain became my compass, guiding others through their own storms. Of course, my family couldn't stay silent forever. By summer, I received another letter, this time from my mother. It wasn't an apology, it was a demand. She accused me of abandoning my duties, of turning my back on everything Dad wanted. She begged for money, thinly disguised as guilt, insisting that my brother was struggling, that the family was falling apart without me. I read the letter twice, then I burned it. That act, small as it was, felt like a declaration I would no longer carry their sins. The strange thing was, as I let them go, I found myself grieving. Not for them as they were, but for the family I had always wished they could be. I mourned the hugs I never received, the pride they never expressed, the unconditional love I never felt. And in mourning it, I finally accepted that it would never come. One evening, sitting on William's balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold, I whispered, "I lost them." He turned to me, his eyes steady. "No," he said softly. "You freed yourself from them. There's a difference." And he was right. Because in losing them, I gained myself. And that was a trade I would make 1,000 times over. Summer bled into autumn, and with it came a clarity I had never known. My life no longer revolved around answering the phone at my mother's command or driving across town to rescue my brother from his latest disaster. The silence from them, once terrifying, now felt like oxygen. I could breathe without their constant demands pressing on my chest. But healing is never a straight line. Some nights I still lay awake, haunted by their words. My mother's voice telling me I was selfish. My brother insisting I was nothing without them. My sister-in-law's mocking smirk when I was forced to clean up their mess. These echoes returned in the dark, gnawing at me, daring me to believe them again. And every time I had to remind myself they were wrong. They had always been wrong. It was during one of those restless nights that I remembered something my father once told me when I was a girl. I had been crying after a cruel fight with Brian, and my father had lifted my chin and whispered, Ashley's strength isn't about carrying everyone. It's about knowing when to put the weight down. At the time, I didn't understand. Now, all these years later, his words finally settled into place. I began pouring myself into my consultancy, watching it grow beyond anything I had imagined. Clients came with stories that mirrored my own, women drained by families, partners, and obligations that never gave back. With every financial plan I built, every workshop I hosted, I wasn't just teaching numbers. I was teaching freedom. I was teaching what I had bled to learn, that no one deserves to be consumed by the people they love. And yet my family still lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. The final break came at Thanksgiving. I hadn't planned to see them, but my Aunt Clara invited me to her home. Just dinner, she promised. No drama, just us. Against my better judgment, I went. Clara had always been kind, one of the few who truly saw me, and I wanted to believe her. When I arrived, the house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon. Warm light spilled across the table, set for 15. I almost felt normal until I saw them. My mother, my stepfather, my brother and his wife already seated as though nothing had ever happened. The air shifted the moment I walked in. My mother's eyes narrowed. My brother smirked. My sister-in-law whispered something under her breath. Clara looked apologetic, but it was too late. I was already trapped. Dinner was a strained affair. Conversation danced on the surface, but beneath it was a current of resentment. Finally, midway through dessert, my mother set down her fork and looked at me across the table. "You've hurt this family, Ashley," she said, her voice heavy with false sorrow. "Your father would be ashamed of you." The words hit me like a slap. For years, she had wielded his memory as a weapon, twisting his love into chains around my throat. But this time I didn't flinch. "No," I said quietly. "He'd be ashamed of you." Gasps echoed around the table. My mother's face flushed red, her lips trembling with rage. "How dare you? How dare you?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "How dare you abandon me, use me, humiliate me, and then hide behind Dad's name? He wanted me to take care of this family. Yes, but not like this. Not as your servant. Not as your scapegoat. He wanted me to love you, not destroy myself for you. And I won't anymore." The room was silent, all eyes on me. My brother leaned back, sneering. "There she goes again, playing the victim." I turned to him, my voice steady. "Victim no Brian, I was your lifeline. Every debt you paid, every bill you ignored, I covered it, and you laughed at me behind my back. But I'm not your safety net anymore. Fall if you must." His smirk faltered. I looked around the table, meeting each gaze without fear. "You all may choose to believe their lies, but I've chosen something else, the truth. And the truth is, I deserve better than this." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, no one moved. Then Clara reached out, her eyes glistening, and whispered, "Ashley, you don't have to stay." So I didn't. I walked out of that house, the cold night air filling my lungs like freedom. Behind me, voices rose in chaos, accusations, defenses, excuses. But I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something profound. I had been waiting my whole life for them to change. For them to see me, love me, choose me. But people like them don't change. They don't wake up one day and become what you need. The only change that mattered was mine. And I had changed. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed their love. I had found something greater, the power to walk away. Winter returned once again, and with it came memories I couldn't escape. Snow drifted down outside my apartment window, soft and silent like the echoes of every Christmas past. For the first time in years, I wasn't preparing to drive hours to pick up my family, to juggle their needs, to play the role of the dependable daughter who never asked for anything. This year was different. This year I had chosen myself. On Christmas Eve, I sat by the fireplace in William's apartment, the two of us drinking wine as carols played faintly in the background. He had decorated the tree himself, ornaments in shades of gold and silver, twinkling lights that reflected in the glass windows overlooking the city. It was beautiful, peaceful, almost unreal. I thought of all the Christmases I had spent running after my brother's children, serving meals my mother barely acknowledged, cleaning up messes while everyone else laughed. And now here I was, sitting quietly with someone who valued me not for what I gave, but simply for being me. But healing isn't a clean cut. Even in that warmth, my mind wandered back to the faces I had left behind. My mother's glare, my brother's sneer, my sister-in-law's smirk. They haunted me still like shadows clinging to the edges of light. William noticed my silence. He placed his hand over mine. "You're thinking of them again," he said softly. I nodded. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. If maybe I should have given them one more chance. He shook his head gently. "Ashley, you gave them years of chances. You gave them your money, your time, your health, your peace, and they took it all without ever once giving back. You didn't abandon them, you freed yourself." His words settled deep in me. He was right. I hadn't destroyed the family, they had destroyed themselves piece by piece long before I walked away. All I had done was stop patching up the cracks. The next morning I woke to the quiet glow of Christmas Day. My phone, as usual, was filled with messages. Some were from distant relatives, polite greetings wrapped in hesitation. Others were from my mother and brother, angry, manipulative, dripping with guilt. "You've torn this family apart. Dad would never forgive you. You'll regret this one day." For a long moment I stared at those words. Then slowly I deleted them. I didn't reply. Not with anger, not with explanation, just silence, because sometimes silence is the only answer left. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. My consultancy was thriving, reaching more women than I could have imagined. I was invited to speak at events to share not just my professional knowledge but my personal story. The first time I stood on stage and told the truth that my family had used me, that betrayal had nearly broken me, that walking away had saved me, the room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. And then when I finished, the applause thundered not just for my words, but for the strength it took to speak them. After the event, a young woman approached me, her eyes wet with tears. I thought I was the only one, she whispered. "My family treats me the same way. They only call when they need money or help." I thought that was love. I took her hand and said, "It's not love if it only exists when you're giving. Real love doesn't demand your destruction." Her sobs broke into my shoulder, and in that moment, I knew my scars had become someone else's survival guide. Months later, as spring bloomed, I visited my father's grave for the first time in years. The cemetery was quiet blossoms scattered across the grass, the air heavy with the scent of renewal. I knelt by his headstone, my fingers tracing his name. "Dad," I whispered. "I tried. For so long I tried to carry them. I thought I was honoring you. But it was killing me. I hope you understand why I had to let go. I hope you see that I'm finally living, not just surviving." Tears slipped down my cheeks, but they were different this time. Not heavy with guilt, but light with release. For the first time, I felt like my father would be proud, not because I carried everyone else, but because I had finally carried myself. The years since have not been easy. My family never forgave me, and perhaps they never will. But I learned that forgiveness from them isn't what I needed. Forgiveness from myself was. And once I gave that to myself, I found peace. Looking back now, I see the arc of it all. The girl who believed her worth was measured by sacrifice. The woman who nearly drowned in duty, the breaking point on a snowy mountain when she finally said no. The chaos that followed the pain of walking away, the scars that will never fully fade. But also the freedom, the clarity, the strength that grew from ashes. If there is one lesson my story carries, it is this. Sometimes the family you're born into cannot love you the way you need. Sometimes the only way to survive is to walk away. And though the world may call it betrayal, it is not. It is self-preservation. It is survival. It is freedom. So if you are listening to me now, if you have ever felt used, unseen, or unloved in the place that was supposed to be your home, I want you to know this: you are not alone. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not wrong for refusing to be consumed. And you are not unworthy because they failed to love you. You are enough. You always were. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If my story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment with your own story or the lesson you've learned. Together we can build a space where betrayal becomes strength and scars become stories that light the way for others.